Hi there, and welcome to our short presentation on alleviating anxiety in autistic children. My name is Jackie Hall, and I am the founder of the Parental Stress Centre, a qualified counsellor, and also the creator of our 9-week Autism Parental Stress Relief Program. So in today's presentation, I just want to give you a quick overview of what to look for when you're seeing anxiety in an autistic child. Now, the first thing that we need to do is recognize the behaviors that you might see in an anxious child. One of them being like they could be very stuck in routines and certain rituals that they feel they have to play out. It can be by way of avoidance behaviors, meltdowns, self-harming, where that may be literally harming themselves or banging their heads or doing some sort of repetitive movement that is dangerous to themselves. You might see aggressive behaviors, whether it's towards themselves or towards to somebody else, obsessive behaviors, stimming, where they're moving certain parts of their body or they're feeling repetitive, they're doing repetitive movements or repetitive rituals. It can be echolalia anxiety, where they're repeating certain words or phrases over and over again, and it can be selective mutism. But the problem with all of these different behaviors is that they aren't always necessarily anxiety related. So we need to try to recognize what is anxiety and what isn't anxiety, so that you can tell if there's some mental health approach that you're needing to use to help the autistic child. And that's what this presentation is solely about. So to begin with, I want to help you to recognize the 3 crucial factors that are always present in anxiety. Now, the first one is that anxiety is always about how the child is perceiving life. If we look at how all human beings process things, they experience the event with the 5 senses. They see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, smell it. Then the sensory information is getting sent into the brain for evaluation. The brain is saying, what is this that I see, hear, touch, taste, smell? Have I seen it before? Do I have a reference point? Do I have an opinion of it? What is it that I do? Because the brain is always trying to assess what's happening so it can take the appropriate actions in order to pursue pleasure or avoid pain. And so based on how the brain is evaluating life, it triggers 2 responses. The first one is a physical response, that every time you have a thought, you release chemicals into the body. So those emotions that a child feels, or that we all feel, is coming from how we perceive life. So you'll see the child be emotional, which is the physical response, and they don't always understand what that physical response means. They're just feeling those emotions inside their body and responding from that place. Because the second response is our behavior, what we do in order to reinstate pleasure or avoid pain. So when we look at this diagram, we see that the emotions and the behavior are really just the end result. If we want to change the emotions, we want to change the behavior, we have to change the thought process that triggered it in the first place. So when we're helping parents to understand, or even educators to understand how to help a child with anxiety, the very first thing we need to do is understand what must that child be thinking for them to be feeling the way that they are and for them to be behaving the way that they are, because there is always a function behind the behavior. There's always a purpose. We have to try and make sense of why the child is behaving the way that they are, because it's not naughty behavior. It could be defiant behavior, but why are they being defiant? How are they perceiving things? So we need to get an understanding of the thought process that's going on. And as you may or may not know, the autistic brain is not thinking the same way as a neurotypical brain. So some of those connections are taking a little bit longer to join the dots between the different parts of the brain. Sometimes they haven't literally learnt the skills that they're needing to learn in order to cope with the situation that's in front of them. And so the behavior is showing you and telling you what's happening and where they're at in their mindset. The second thing that we need to identify is that anxiety is always future focused. So I like to use the hand model of the brain from Dr. Daniel Siegel. So he explains that there's the survival part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain, and the rational part of the brain. And we want the emotional and the rational to be working together. Now, as we're experiencing life, we're seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, that sensory information comes in here through something called the thalamus, right? And so the thalamus sends, so the sense of smell goes directly to the emotional brain, but the thalamus comes in here, the sensory information comes in through the thalamus and gets sent to the emotional brain and the rational brain. Now look how close the emotional brain is compared to the rational brain. So we're effectively perceiving things emotionally before we perceive them rationally. And that emotional brain's checking in with the hippocampus down here and saying, hey, hippo, what is this that I see here, touch, taste, smell? Have I seen it before? Do I have a reference point? What's my opinion, right? And so that hippocampus is drawing upon past reference points. Accurate or not, it's drawing upon those past reference points in order to predict the future. And when a child is anxious, what they're doing is they're drawing from those past reference points and they're predicting this, like what's going to happen in the future. So the brain is essentially going, this that I see here, touch, taste, smell, equals that, rightly or wrongly, and the body is having a response to that. So it automatically thinks, this is what happened last time, so it's going to happen again. So in this example in front of you, we can see that the child has a reference point of friends not liking her, or she was upset about something in relation to friends, and automatically assumes that that's going to happen again when she's faced with any evidence that suggests that this could equal that. So we need to recognize that a child is not always in the present moment and assessing the present moment based on current evidence or current situation. It could be seeing something in the present situation that they are associating with the past and thinking that something dangerous or a threat to our survival is going to happen again. So anxiety is always future focused, always focusing on what could go wrong. And the third one, which is probably the most important one, is recognizing that anxiety is all about control and prevent. That I'm trying to control my life to go right, to meet a picture of what I think should be right, or I'm trying to prevent or avoid something from going wrong. So in their mindset, they can have all of these different pictures, these ideas, these expectations of how life is supposed to go. That can come down to a part of their identity, that I think I have to be the smart one. It can be about getting approval from other people. It can be about fitting in. It can be literally about surviving a physical threat, because what may not feel like a physical threat to you can feel like a physical threat to them, like really loud noises or something that's really uncomfortable and distracting for their body, can make their body want to go into fight or flight and anxiety response, because it's literally trying to protect itself from pain. So this is why we have to be so observant about what must that child be thinking in order to be feeling the way they are or behaving the way that they are. So any sort of routine, any sort of agenda to feel good or to avoid a bad experience that I've had, remembering that all behavior is about that pursuit of pleasure and that avoidance of pain. So the behavior, the function of the behavior when anxiety is around is all about control and prevent, controlling life to go right, preventing life from going wrong. So this gives you a bit of an awareness to kind of start to observe that behavior and go, what is this child trying to control right now? What pleasure are they trying to pursue? What pain are they trying to prevent? And that's going to give you some really good insight into why their behavior makes sense. Because going back to that hand analogy, if the senses, if the information is coming through the senses and the emotional brain is checking in with the hippocampus, evaluating the situation and saying, hey, this is dangerous, this is a threat to my survival, it's going to send messages to the autonomic nervous system to trigger the body to go into fight or flight. And when the body's going into fight or flight, there's a lot of processes going on. Eyes are narrowing only in on the threat, so it's cancelling out everything else around them. And then it's limiting blood flow to the rational part of the brain, so the child can't think straight when they're in anxiety mode. So they're essentially, how Dr. Daniel Siegel says, they've flip their lid. So this can happen even when they're angry or they're aggressive. They're flipping their lid. The rational, reasoning, logical side of the brain has gone offline. They are responding in survival mode. Their body is responding just like it would if it's being chased by a lion. They'll feel that chemical response of fear or terror. They'll go into fight or flight, run, hide, freeze. That's where you can get the freeze, is where you can get the shutdowns or dissociation even sometimes, or they might be trying to be aggressive and fight. But can you really start to see how these behaviors that you're seeing are coming from how the mind is perceiving things in that moment? So it doesn't matter what the external event is. If the mind is perceiving the event as a threat, the physiological reaction is the same, because the body can't differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. So we need to help the child to come back into the present moment to see evidence of their safety, because they're not looking for evidence of their safety. They're looking for evidence of the threat, and they're responding to the threat, whether it's an emotional threat or it's a physical threat for them, which is why I keep saying over and over again, it is incredibly important that we understand what the child is thinking for them to be behaving this way before we even think about implementing any sort of solutions, because we might get it wrong. You know, it might be, for example, you know, let's say a child is standing near a fire and saying, I'm really hot. And you go, oh, here's an umbrella, you know, I'll take the sun off you. It's like, that's not why they're hot in the first place. And that's not going to help them, because what they're actually needing is to move away from the fire. So we're actually needing to help them with the actual problem. And to do that, we need to understand what's going on in their mindset, and we need to make sense of why their behavior, why their emotions are the way that they are. So 4 most important points are that I want you to get from this presentation. 1, anxiety comes from a perceived or actual threat. 2, anxiety is future focused. It's not based on what's happening in the present, but it's based on a past experience that they're projecting or expecting to happen again in the future. 3, anxiety-related behaviours are about control and prevent, trying to control things to go right, prevent things from going wrong. And 4, when in anxiety mode, the body is in survival mode and the rational part of the brain is impaired, it's shut down. Don't try to reason with a child that is in that fight or flight mode. The very first thing we're needing to do is bring them back down to baseline, calm them down first, bring them back into the present moment, and then you can help them to assess what happened, what were they thinking, and to help to give them the tools that they're needing to be able to handle that situation next time. So what I hope you've gotten out of this presentation is that really there are 2 arms to the solution to helping an autistic child with anxiety. The first one is definitely mindset. That is the most crucial part of it, that we're helping them not only to understand that some of the things that they're predicting or the way that they're perceiving life can be incorrect, and helping them to look at life differently and look at life from different perspectives so they can learn a more flexible mindset. So that's definitely the most important component that's going to help to alleviate the anxiety. But let's not forget the practical elements as well, because there are practical things we can do to reduce the anxiety, like prevention, for example, and planning, helping the child to know what's coming up, and redirecting sometimes when you can see them anticipating a future based on the past, you can redirect and distract into something else. There's also lowering your expectations when you're recognizing that the child isn't skilled in this area or is still practicing in that area. They haven't quite grasped what they're needing to do in those situations. And then there's, of course, actually teaching them and shaping their behavior to gradually be exposed to learning new skills and you know, staging it so they learn a little bit and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and being really patient about their learning process. So I really hope you've enjoyed this presentation and kind of got a bit out of it that you can start to recognize anxiety in an autistic child and really get to know that child and the human behind the behavior, because the behavior always makes sense. So if you're wanting any further information, we do have a 9-week autism parental stress relief program and support for parents. If you want any more information, you can contact us on info@parentalstress.com.au or call us on 1300 948 608. We are 100% online. However, we are based on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and we will have an additional couple of slides that we will be giving you that gives you a little bit more information about that 9-week course if you're interested. Otherwise, if for some reason that you don't have those slides, just send us an email or give us a call and we can shoot those over to you. So thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time and hope this has been beneficial for you. So take care and bye for now.